A quiet Tuesday morning unfolded in the corner of a bustling cafe. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, and the sound of clinking mugs and low conversations painted a familiar scene. For most, it was just another day, but for Maya, it would mark the beginning of something unexpected. Maya was a waitress at the Java Spot, a cozy cafe tucked away in the corner of the street. It was the kind of place where the baristas knew the regulars by name, and the warmth of the atmosphere drew in all types of customers. Maya had been working there for almost a year, and while the job was often repetitive, there was something she loved about it. The rhythm of the work, the way customers seemed to always brighten her day, even the occasional awkward interaction. But on that day, she didn't know that someone was about to change her life. It was a quiet morning, not many customers yet. The usual morning crowd hadn't arrived, and Maya was wiping down tables near the window when she saw a boy walk in. He couldn't have been older than 12, dressed in a simple blue hoodie and a pair of jeans. But there was something different about him, something that Maya couldn't quite put her finger on. The boy hesitated by the door, his eyes darting from one corner of the cafe to another. His hands fidgeted at his sides, and his head turned rapidly as if trying to block out some unseen noise. He didn't seem to notice Maya staring at him, though. She watched him for a few seconds, wondering if he was lost. As he stepped further inside, she could see his discomfort more clearly. His face was tense, his shoulders hunched, and every step he took seemed calculated, like he was unsure of whether or not the ground would suddenly shift beneath him. The cafe doorbell jingled as he reached the counter. Maya instinctively stepped forward, a smile forming on her face as she approached him. "Hey there," she said softly, trying to sound inviting. "What can I get you?" The boy's gaze snapped up to hers, and for a brief moment, she saw fear flicker in his eyes. He swallowed, looking away quickly, then back again, as though working up the courage to speak. I don't know." His voice cracked slightly. He looked down at the floor, his hands rubbing together in a nervous motion. Maya noticed the signs immediately: fidgeting, difficulty making eye contact, speaking in a way that seemed disconnected. It wasn't the first time she'd seen this behavior. Over the past year, she had learned that many of the cafe's regulars were parents or caregivers of children with special needs. Some of them had sensory processing disorders, similar to what she thought this boy might have. Maya didn't push. Instead, she leaned in slightly, speaking softly. "I understand. No pressure. If you want to take your time, you can. It's just me here for now." The boy's gaze met hers again, more steady this time. I'll have a hot chocolate," he said, his voice small but clear. Maya gave a small nod and turned to prepare his drink. She didn't ask for any other details or try to rush him. She simply did her job and let him settle into the space. As she made the hot chocolate, she couldn't help but feel a pang of empathy. She knew what it felt like to be overwhelmed by the world. Maya had spent many years in her own struggles, some of which had been related to her past traumas, and she had learned how to deal with them in her own quiet ways. She understood what it was like to feel like the world was moving too fast, too loud, too demanding. When the hot chocolate was ready, she set it on the counter in front of the boy and smiled warmly. "There you go. I hope it's just the right temperature." He looked up at her, his eyes briefly softening. "Thanks," he muttered, then grabbed the cup carefully, as if he was worried it might burn him. Maya watched him as he walked to a table in the corner, carefully sitting down and avoiding any direct interaction with the other customers. She went back to her duties, checking the counter and clearing a few used cups from nearby tables. She saw the boy from time to time, glancing over at him subtly. He was sipping his hot chocolate, looking around nervously, as though everything in the cafe was too much for him to take in. And then, just as she was starting to think about going on her break, something unexpected happened. The boy suddenly jumped up from his seat, spilling the hot chocolate all over the table. He stood frozen, staring at the mess in panic, his hands trembling as he looked at the spilled drink. Maya's heart skipped a beat. She could see the distress in his eyes, like the world around him was crashing down. His chest rose and fell rapidly, and his breathing seemed shallow. Maya rushed over to him, her voice calm. "It's okay. It's okay. You're okay." The boy didn't respond. He only stood there, wide-eyed and unblinking, as though he was trapped in a moment of overwhelming sensory input. Maya quickly grabbed a napkin and started to clean up the mess, all the while trying to keep her voice soothing and gentle. "Hey," she said again, her tone steady. "It's just a little spill. I'll clean it up. You're okay." He looked at her, and this time his eyes seemed less panicked. He blinked slowly, and his breathing began to slow. I didn't mean to," he whispered, his voice trembling. Maya smiled softly, shaking her head. "You didn't do anything wrong. Accidents happen, right?" For the first time since he'd entered, the boy nodded, though his posture was still tense. Maya wiped up the last bit of the spilled chocolate and set the napkin aside. She didn't push him to say anything more, but there was something in his eyes that made her want to do more, to help in some way. "Would you like to sit somewhere a little quieter?" Maya asked gently. "I can get you another drink if you want." He glanced around at the cafe, his eyes flicking to the door as if weighing his options. After a long pause, he finally nodded, hesitantly. Maya led him to a table in a more secluded corner of the cafe, away from the bustle. She felt a strange bond with this boy, even though they had barely spoken. There was something raw and vulnerable about the way he was interacting with the world, and for some reason, Maya knew that he needed more than just a hot chocolate. He needed a safe space. Once they sat down, she gave him a moment of quiet before asking, "Do you come here often?" The boy shook his head. "First time," he said softly. I wanted to try it. My mom said it might help." Maya nodded, understanding. "It's nice to try new things. I think it can help, just being in a different space." He looked at her, his face still tense, but a little less anxious. "Do you think I'm weird?" His voice was barely above a whisper, and Maya knew he wasn't asking about the spilled hot chocolate. Maya smiled again, her voice calm and reassuring. "Not weird. Just different, like everyone else. We all have our own ways of feeling things. Some of us are just a little more sensitive to the world around us." For the first time since he had entered, the boy relaxed, just a little. "I'm Jonah," he said quietly. "Maya," she replied, smiling. They sat in the quiet corner for a few more minutes, Jonah sipping his second drink, and Maya cleaning up around the cafe. She noticed that he seemed calmer now, but the uncertainty in his eyes hadn't quite gone away. As she worked, she couldn't stop thinking about him, about how much he had reminded her of herself at his age, how much she had struggled with her own sensory overloads, how much it had taken for her to find her own way in the world. She decided then and there that she wanted to help him more. But the next day, as she arrived at work, the cafe was packed. The morning rush was in full swing, and she had barely settled into her shift before a familiar figure walked through the door. Jonah was back. But this time, something was different. He wasn't alone. His mother stood by his side, smiling nervously as she glanced around. Jonah seemed less anxious today, and Maya's heart lifted a little as she made her way over to them. "Good morning," she greeted them, trying to sound cheerful. "How are you both today?" Jonah's mom smiled warmly, though there was still a hint of concern in her eyes. "Better, actually," she said. "Jonah's been looking forward to this since yesterday. I think he feels comfortable here." Maya's heart skipped a beat as she realized just how much her small act of kindness had affected him. It wasn't just about the spilled drink or the calming words. It was about creating a space where Jonah could feel safe, even if just for a little while. Jonah looked up at Maya and nodded, a small, shy smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I'd like to try a new drink today," Jonah said, more confidently than before. "Can you recommend something?" Maya grinned. "Of course. Let's find something just for you." As she went to prepare his order, Maya realized something profound. She had no idea how deeply this moment would impact both their lives. Jonah had helped her, too. He had reminded her of the power of small acts of kindness, how even the smallest gesture could change someone's day. What she didn't know was that this encounter would lead to a bond neither of them could have predicted. But that story was just beginning. As Maya prepared Jonah's new drink, she couldn't help but reflect on how strange life could be sometimes. The small, seemingly insignificant moments often held the most weight. She had only spoken a few kind words to Jonah yesterday, words that felt natural to her, Words that were easy, comforting, almost instinctive. Yet in those words, she had created a space for him to feel safe, and that simple act of kindness had sparked something she wasn't prepared for. She smiled to herself as she steamed the milk, her mind still on Jonah's shy smile from earlier. It was a smile that held so much meaning, as if it was an acknowledgement of something deeper, something unspoken. She could feel the change within him. His mother had noticed it too. It wasn't just the drink that was different today, or the setting. It was Jonah himself. The nervous tension that had gripped him so tightly yesterday had loosened, if only a little. Maya had seen it in his posture when he walked through the door. His shoulders were a little less hunched, his gaze a little more steady. This boy was starting to feel more comfortable in the world. And maybe, just maybe, Maya had played a role in that. As she handed Jonah his new drink, a cinnamon latte with a touch of honey, she could see the hesitation in his eyes, but also a spark of curiosity, a willingness to try something new. She had made it just the way she thought he'd like it, something warm and smooth, but not too overwhelming, something with just enough sweetness to be inviting, without being too intense. She set it in front of him and smiled gently, her eyes meeting his for a brief moment. "Here you go. I hope this one's just right," she said softly. Jonah's mother, who had been quietly watching the exchange, gave Maya a warm smile. "Thank you, Maya," she said. "I'm so grateful for your kindness. Jonah doesn't open up to people easily, but something about this place, it's different." Maya nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I'm just glad he feels comfortable here. Sometimes it's all about finding the right space, you know." Jonah's mother glanced at him, then back at Maya. "I think he's starting to find it. He was so excited to come back today. He told me last night that he wanted to come back because he felt good here. I don't think he's said that about any place in a long time." Maya's heart swelled at those words. To some, it might have seemed like a small thing, but to her, it felt huge. Jonah had found something, some little piece of the world that made sense to him, that allowed him to breathe a little easier. And she had helped create that space. It was a feeling Maya wasn't used to, being part of something bigger than herself, something that could change a person's life. Jonah took a sip of his cinnamon latte, his expression thoughtful. He didn't speak at first, and Maya gave him the space to process, to decide if he liked it, if he was going to open up. And then, after a long moment, he looked up at her, his eyes softening. "This is really good," he said quietly. There was a small smile that tugged at the corners of his lips, one that felt almost shy, but sincere. It was a smile that made Maya feel as if she had just unlocked a secret. His mother's smile widened. "I think we might be coming here more often." "Huh?" Jonah's response was a little more confident this time, though still quiet. "Yeah, I like it here." Maya couldn't help but feel a rush of pride. She didn't know exactly how she had done it, how she had managed to create such a shift in Jonah's demeanor, but she knew that it mattered. It mattered to him, and it mattered to her. She had made a difference in someone's life, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was in the right place, doing the right thing. Over the next few weeks, Jonah and his mother returned to the Java spot regularly. Each visit brought with it a little more confidence, a little less hesitation. Jonah started to order different drinks, experimenting with flavors, asking Maya for recommendations, and even striking up brief conversations with the other customers when they weren't too busy. It was as if, bit by bit, he was finding his way through the noise of the world, a world that had once felt too loud, too overwhelming. Every time he came into the cafe, there was a noticeable change. His movements were less guarded, his expressions less tense. He was starting to trust the world around him again, and Maya felt a sense of joy in watching that transformation unfold. One particular afternoon, as the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the cafe, Jonah and his mother walked in again. Jonah, as usual, looked a little anxious, but also excited. There was a subtle difference today, though. He wasn't just coming in for a drink. There was a determination in his step, a sense of purpose. Maya noticed it immediately as he walked up to the counter. "I'd like to try something new today," Jonah said, his voice steadier than it had ever been before. Maya leaned forward, her interest piqued. "Something new? Huh? What are you thinking?" Jonah hesitated for a moment, his eyes darting to the menu before meeting her gaze. I was thinking, I want to try the biggest challenge. Can you make something special? Something I've never had before. Maya blinked, a little surprised by the request. But she didn't hesitate for long. This was the Jonah she had seen slowly growing over the past few weeks, the one who was ready to step outside his comfort zone. She smiled. I think I know just the thing. As she prepared his drink, a special creation she had never made before, she could feel her heart race a little. There was something about this moment, something that felt like a turning point, not just for Jonah, but for her too. As she handed him the drink, she felt a sense of pride in the small act of service, in the quiet way she had helped him find his voice, find his place in the world. But there was more to it. Maya knew that her role in Jonah's journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. Jonah looked down at the drink, his expression filled with curiosity. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like this before, he said, his voice filled with awe. Maya chuckled softly. It's a special creation just for you. Try it. Let me know what you think. Jonah took a tentative sip, then another, his eyes widening slightly as the flavor hit his taste buds. For a moment, he was silent, his face unreadable. And then, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke again. This is really good, I think. I think this is the best thing I've ever tasted. Maya's heart swelled with happiness at the words. It wasn't just about the drink. It wasn't even just about the connection they had formed. It was about the fact that Jonah had pushed himself, taken a chance, stepped out of his comfort zone, and he had found something wonderful on the other side. Maya had been there to help him, but he had done the hard work himself. And that, she realized, was what made this all so meaningful. Jonah's mother, who had been watching the exchange with a proud smile, turned to Maya. Thank you. I can't express how much this means to us. Jonah's been so hesitant about trying new things for so long. You've helped him in ways I can't even describe. Maya smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. I'm just glad I could help. Sometimes, it's the little things that make the biggest difference. And yet, even as she spoke those words, she couldn't shake the feeling that something more was at play here. This moment, this connection, it wasn't just about Jonah. It wasn't just about the drinks or the cafe. It was something deeper. Maya had helped Jonah find his voice, but in doing so, she had found a part of herself she hadn't realized was missing. She had been searching for meaning in her own life, struggling with her own sense of purpose, but in helping Jonah navigate his world, she had discovered something vital. The act of serving others, of creating safe spaces for them to thrive, had given her a sense of fulfillment that she had been missing for far too long. Over the next few months, Jonah's visits became more frequent. He wasn't just a quiet boy who came in for a drink anymore. He was becoming a part of the cafe's community. He started to interact with other customers, to share his thoughts, to laugh a little louder. His transformation was undeniable, and with each visit, Maya could see the shift within him. But she also saw something else, something that filled her with pride. Jonah wasn't the only one changing. Maya was, too. The quiet waitress who had been content to stay in the background was now stepping forward, finding purpose in her connection with others, in her ability to make a difference in their lives. But there was still more to come. What Maya didn't know, what neither of them could have predicted, was how their paths would continue to intertwine. Jonah's journey was just beginning, and Maya's role in it was far from over. There were more lessons to be learned, more challenges to face, and more moments of growth waiting to unfold. And in the days to come, they would both find that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could create the most profound changes. The days that followed felt like a slow unraveling of the invisible threads that had connected Jonah and Maya from the very start. Maya couldn't help but think back to when she first met him, how hesitant and quiet he had been, and how, in her small way, she had managed to create a space for him to feel like he mattered. It wasn't something she had expected to happen. She hadn't gone into her job at the Java spot with the idea of changing anyone's life, least of all a young boy like Jonah. But as the days turned into weeks, the changes were undeniable. She saw him grow in ways she hadn't even imagined. The little boy who once barely spoke now shared stories with the other regulars at the cafe. He began to carry himself with a quiet confidence that was both noticeable and remarkable, especially for someone who had once found it difficult to even make eye contact. It was a Tuesday when the next big shift occurred. Jonah arrived alone, which wasn't unusual. His mother was often busy with work, and he liked the solitude. He stepped into the Java spot with the same careful movements that had always marked his entrance. But today, there was something different. His eyes were brighter, his shoulders not quite as stiff. He wasn't just walking through the door, he was walking toward something, toward a new chapter in his life. Maya noticed at the moment he stepped up to the counter, the way his gaze locked with hers in a way that felt less timid, more purposeful. There was a certain sense of steadiness in him today, like the ground beneath him had become a little more solid. She smiled as she greeted him. "Hey there, Jonah. What can I get you today?" she asked, already preparing herself for whatever drink he might order. She had grown accustomed to his preference for the familiar, but today, she wondered if he was ready for something new. Jonah hesitated for a moment, his gaze flickering toward the menu board, then back to Maya. "I think I want to try something different," he said, his voice quieter than usual, but there was a trace of excitement in it. He wasn't just asking for a drink, he was asking for a new experience. The thought made Maya's heart flutter. It was a small step, but for Jonah, it was a leap. She leaned forward slightly, considering the best way to respond. "How about a caramel macchiato with a touch of vanilla? It's sweet, but not too overwhelming. I think you'll like it." Jonah smiled a little, nodding. "I'll try that." As Maya prepared the drink, she watched him closely. There was something about his demeanor that felt like it was part of a larger shift, something inside of him moving forward, step by step. Maya couldn't help but reflect on her own journey. She had been serving coffee and making small talk with customers for years, but she had never felt so connected to her job as she did now. She was no longer just a waitress, she was part of something bigger. Jonah's transformation, his willingness to take risks, was teaching her to do the same. She had always been content to stay in the background, doing what was expected of her, but now she saw how powerful small acts of kindness could be, how much they could change someone's life, even in ways that weren't immediately apparent. And perhaps that was what she needed to realize about herself. Just like Jonah, she wasn't stuck in one place. She could grow. She could change, too. Jonah sat at his usual spot near the window, staring out at the street. His fingers tapped lightly against the wooden table, the rhythm slow but steady. Maya could see that he was lost in thought, as if something was weighing heavily on his mind. She couldn't help but wonder what it was. Was it something he had seen or heard, something that had triggered a memory or a thought? She couldn't read him the way she could read the other customers, who were often predictable in their routines. Jonah was different. His emotions seemed more complex, more layered. Maya had always admired his quietness, but she also wondered what was behind it. She knew he wasn't just shy. There was something deeper going on, something that caused him to retreat into himself at times. As the cafe slowly filled with customers, Maya busied herself with her tasks, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Jonah. She couldn't help but feel a connection to him, one that went beyond their brief interactions. She had become a small part of his life, and in doing so, she had started to play a bigger role in his journey of growth. It was a strange feeling, knowing that she was somehow helping him navigate his world, but it was also fulfilling. She found herself looking forward to seeing him each day, eager to witness the next step in his progress. The afternoon passed in a blur of activity, but as the cafe began to empty out, Maya noticed Jonah was still sitting at the table by the window. His drink was untouched, his hands resting on the edge of his cup, but his gaze was far away. It was as if he wasn't really there anymore. Maya felt a pull in her chest, a sudden urgency to go to him, to make sure everything was all right. She moved across the cafe, her footsteps quiet on the polished floor. As she approached, she hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say. Jonah didn't seem to notice her at first, his eyes fixed on something outside the window, something beyond the world inside the cafe. She waited, giving him time to acknowledge her, but when he didn't, she gently placed a hand on the back of the chair across from him. "Jonah," she said softly. "Everything okay?" He blinked, as if startled from his thoughts, then looked up at her. For a moment, he didn't speak, but his expression was more guarded than usual, a mask of uncertainty. He shifted in his seat, his hands curling around his cup, and for a fleeting moment, Maya saw something in his eyes that made her heart ache. There was fear there, raw and unguarded. Fear of what? She wasn't sure, but it was enough to make her pause. "Jonah, you don't have to talk if you don't want to," Maya said, her voice gentle. "But I'm here if you need to." Jonah's lips parted as though he was going to speak, but then he stopped himself, taking a deep breath. His hands tightened around the cup, and when he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, barely above a whisper. "I'm scared," he said, his words laced with vulnerability. "I'm scared that I'm just going to mess things up. I've been trying to be different, trying to be better, but what if it's not enough?" Maya's heart softened at his confession. She could see the struggle in his eyes, the weight of expectations, the fear of failure, the uncertainty that so many people carried with them. Jonah wasn't just battling his sensory processing disorder. He was battling his own self-doubt, his own fear of not being enough. And it broke Maya's heart to see him carry that burden. She sat down across from him, her gaze steady, her tone calm. "Jonah, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have everything figured out right now. Life is about taking small steps, one at a time. And you've already come so far. You've done more than you realize." Jonah's eyes flickered, and he bit his lip, his fingers still curled tightly around the cup. "But what if I fail? What if I try, and it's just not enough?" Maya leaned forward slightly, her voice soft but firm. "Jonah, what if failing is just part of getting where you want to go? You're not alone in this. You have people who care about you, people who believe in you." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "I believe in you, Jonah. I've seen how much you've changed, how hard you've worked. And I know that no matter what happens, you'll keep going. Because that's who you are. You are strong, even when it feels hard." Jonah's eyes shimmered with the beginning of tears, but he didn't look away. For the first time in a long time, he let his walls fall, letting someone see the real him, the vulnerable, scared boy who was afraid of what would happen next. And in that moment, Maya knew that Jonah wasn't just afraid of the world. He was afraid of failing himself. But she also knew that he was capable of so much more than he realized. "Thank you," Jonah whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know if I could do this without you." Maya smiled, her heart swelling. "You don't have to do it alone. We're in this together." And with those words, something shifted. Jonah didn't have all the answers, and neither did Maya. But in that moment, they both realized that sometimes the most important thing was knowing that someone had your back, that someone believed in you even when you couldn't believe in yourself. It was a small but powerful truth, one that would carry them both forward, one step at a time. The following days passed with a slow, almost imperceptible transformation in the air at the Java spot. Jonah's visits became less about simply getting a drink and more about his growing journey of self-discovery. Each time he walked through the door, there was a slight change in his demeanor. His shoulders were less tense, his steps more assured. Even his eyes, which had once been cautious and wary, now met those of the people around him, not with uncertainty, but with a quiet confidence that spoke volumes. It was clear that Maya's simple acts of kindness had done something to him, something deep, and it wasn't just the coffee. It was her unwavering belief in him, the constant reminder that he was more than the limitations he had placed on himself. It was also clear to Maya that this was only the beginning. Jonah had taken the first step toward believing in his own potential, but there was still so much more ahead of him. And while that filled her with pride, it also left her with a feeling of nervous anticipation. She had become so emotionally invested in Jonah's journey that it was almost as if she could feel every one of his steps forward and backward. Her own life seemed to intertwine with his in a way that was both exhilarating and terrifying. She had witnessed the fear in his eyes, the fear of failure, the fear of being judged, and she had helped him push through it. But deep down, she wondered, would this be enough to sustain him? Would he be able to keep moving forward without her? It was a question that haunted her, especially as she watched him become more and more independent in the cafe. Jonah was starting to sit at different tables, engage with other customers, and interact with a sense of purpose that was new to him. It was as though he was spreading his wings, testing the air, before taking flight. And Maya, while proud of his progress, also felt a pang of loss. She had become accustomed to being the anchor in his world, and now she wasn't sure if she was ready for him to soar without her. On a quiet Friday afternoon, a week after that emotional conversation at the cafe, Jonah walked in, but this time, something was different. Maya immediately noticed the change in his posture. He didn't walk up to the counter as usual, carefully placing his order with the tentative smile she had come to recognize. Instead, he paused at the door, scanning the room as though looking for something or someone. His eyes found hers almost instantly, and for a moment they locked in silence. Maya's heart skipped a beat. There was something about the way he looked at her, something so purposeful, that it almost felt like he was trying to tell her something without words. She felt a sudden sense of urgency, a pull in her chest, as if something was about to happen. Maya stepped forward, a nervous energy bubbling up inside her. She hadn't seen Jonah like this before, so composed yet somehow filled with anticipation. She smiled as she approached him. "Hey, Jonah. Everything okay?" He hesitated, glancing down at the floor for a moment before meeting her gaze again. This time, there was something new in his eyes, a determination, a certainty. "Maya, I've been thinking," he began, his voice steady, but with a slight tremor underneath. "I want to do something. Something more. Something big." Maya blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean, Jonah? You're already doing so much by just being here, by pushing through each day." Jonah shook his head. "No, I mean something for me. Something I've always been scared of. I want to try school. I mean really try. I want to start talking to the kids in my class, not just sit there and watch them like I always do. I've been afraid for so long, but I think I can do it now. I've been practicing, and I think I'm ready." Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had known Jonah was making progress, but this was something entirely different. This wasn't just a small change. This was a bold declaration of independence. For Jonah to openly admit he wanted to try something that terrified him was huge. She had seen his anxiety, his reluctance, his tendency to shrink away from things that made him feel exposed. And now, here he was, standing before her, with a determination that radiated from every part of him. For a moment, she simply stood there, taking it all in. She felt a strange combination of pride and fear. Pride, because Jonah had made a choice that could change his life in ways she couldn't even predict. But fear, because she knew this was a big step into uncharted territory for him. And, in a way, it was also a step away from her. She had helped him get this far, but now he was about to step into a world that she couldn't control, a world that might swallow him whole if he wasn't careful. "You're really ready?" she asked, her voice softer than usual. Jonah nodded. "I think so. But I don't want to do it alone. I want you to know. I want you to believe in me. Because I believe in myself now." Maya smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. "I've always believed in you, Jonah. But now, it's time for you to believe in yourself, too. I'm so proud of you." Jonah's eyes shone with unshed tears, but he held them back, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Maya. I don't think I could have done it without you." Maya's heart tightened. It was bittersweet, this moment. She had helped him reach this point, but now it felt like she was being left behind. Not in a bad way, but in the way that a parent feels when their child is ready to spread their wings. It was the moment of realization that her role in Jonah's life had changed. He didn't need her in the same way anymore, and that thought both broke and healed her in a single instant. "I'll be right here, Jonah," she said, her voice filled with warmth and sincerity. "Every step of the way. You've got this." Jonah smiled, his face glowing with the first real spark of hope Maya had ever seen in him. "I'll do my best." As Jonah left the cafe that day, Maya watched him go, a sense of both pride and sorrow welling up inside her. She knew the path ahead for him would be filled with challenges, obstacles, and setbacks. But she also knew that Jonah was ready to face the world on his own terms, ready to overcome his fears and become the person he was meant to be. And just as Maya had believed in him, he now believed in himself. The next morning, Jonah's mother walked into the Java spot alone. She wasn't a regular at the cafe, but she had been there a few times before, always rushing in and out, busy with life. But today, her eyes were different. They were filled with emotion, a quiet, unspoken gratitude. She approached Maya, who was behind the counter, preparing her morning shift. "Maya," she said, her voice soft but heavy with meaning. "I just wanted to thank you. I don't know if Jonah's told you, but he's been making incredible progress. He's been more confident, more open, and last night, he said something that left me speechless. He told me he was ready to face the kids at school, that he was going to start talking to them. He's never said anything like that before, and I know that it's because of you. You've given him something I couldn't even understand until now." Maya's heart fluttered at the words. She had been so focused on Jonah's growth that she hadn't stopped to realize the impact her actions had on his family. She smiled warmly at Jonah's mother. "I'm just glad I could help. Jonah's an amazing kid. He's done all the hard work. I'm just here to support him." Jonah's mother looked at Maya with a deep, searching gaze. "You've done more than support him. You've given him the courage to believe in himself. And for that, I'll always be grateful." Maya felt her throat tighten with emotion, but she held back the tears. She had never expected to become such a big part of Jonah's journey, but here she was, standing at the heart of something beautiful and profound. She had helped him see his own worth, and in doing so, she had found a new sense of purpose within herself. She wasn't just serving coffee anymore. She was serving something much bigger, something that would last a lifetime. As Jonah's mother left the cafe, Maya stood there for a moment, letting the weight of the conversation settle in. She had played a small but pivotal role in Jonah's life, and though the journey wasn't over, she knew that no matter where he went or what challenges he faced, he would always carry the belief in himself that she had helped plant. And for Maya, that was enough. She had found her purpose, and in doing so, had helped Jonah find his. The next few weeks seemed to fly by, as the city's constant hum of activity merged with Maya's own whirlwind of thoughts. Jonah had begun to make strides that she hadn't thought possible when she first met him. Every day, she saw little changes, a new word, a shared laugh, a smile that stretched wider than she had ever seen before. He had started talking to the other kids at school. He told her about the small victories, a casual conversation in the hallway, a seat in the cafeteria where he hadn't just sat alone, but engaged with others. Every time he walked into the Java spot now, there was a subtle but undeniable change in his demeanor. He was becoming more confident, more self-assured, and it wasn't just because of Maya's encouragement. It was because Jonah had finally started to believe in himself. Maya had witnessed this kind of growth before. She had seen people change, develop, overcome. But Jonah's journey felt different. It wasn't just about pushing past fear or insecurity. It was about confronting a lifetime of self-doubt and unraveling it thread by thread. She couldn't help but feel deeply connected to him, as though his victories were her own, as though the steps he took in the world reflected the journey she herself had taken in her life. And in some strange way, it felt like she was the one who was learning, the one who was evolving from all the moments they shared. But just as quickly as Jonah had come to this point, Maya began to sense an unease. The cafe, once a place of solace, now felt like a reminder of everything that had been left unsaid. She had watched Jonah grow from someone who hid behind the walls of his own mind to a person who could hold his own in the world. Yet, in the shadows of his newfound independence, Maya began to realize how much she had emotionally invested in him. It wasn't just about helping a boy with sensory processing disorder. It wasn't just about offering support. Somewhere along the way, Maya had become wrapped up in Jonah's life in a way she hadn't anticipated. She had come to depend on his progress as if it were the foundation of her own happiness, her own sense of worth. And now, with each step he took toward independence, Maya couldn't help but feel herself slipping farther into the background. On a crisp autumn evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon and the golden glow of the setting light reflected off the glass windows of the Java spot, Maya sat in a corner booth, watching the world around her. Her fingers gently traced the rim of her coffee cup as she lost herself in thought. The cafe was quieter than usual that evening, just a handful of regulars scattered about the room. Jonah had stopped by earlier in the afternoon to grab a drink before heading off to study, but it had been hours since she last saw him. Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, something between them. She didn't want to admit it, but she knew it was inevitable. Jonah was growing up, and her role in his life, no matter how significant it had been, was starting to fade. It wasn't that Jonah didn't need her anymore. He still did, in his own way. But the dynamic between them had changed. She wasn't sure if she was ready to let go. Her purpose had been so closely tied to helping him, guiding him, watching him take those first difficult steps into the world. It was what had made her job at the cafe feel more meaningful, more fulfilling. But now, the purpose she had once derived from their connection seemed to be slipping away. Jonah was learning to walk without her. And while that was a good thing, it was also a painful reminder of how fleeting everything was. She had given him the tools he needed to find his own way, but she wasn't sure if she was ready for the day when he no longer needed her. The door to the cafe jingled, and Maya looked up to see Jonah walking in. He had changed in subtle but noticeable ways, his posture straighter, his expression more composed. He was no longer the nervous, self-doubting boy who had walked in those few months ago. There was a confidence in his step now, something that radiated from him. But as he looked around the cafe, Maya noticed a glimmer of something else in his eyes. Something was different, something she couldn't quite place. Jonah made his way toward the counter, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't head straight to his usual spot at the farthest corner of the room. Instead, he chose a seat at the counter, as if he was ready to be a part of something larger, ready to interact, to be seen. Maya's heart skipped a beat as she watched him. She had known this moment was coming, but it didn't make it any easier. She made her way over to him, her hands slightly trembling as she set down the cup of coffee he had ordered. "Hey, Jonah," she said softly, a smile on her face, though there was a heaviness behind her eyes. "How's it going?" Jonah smiled back, but it was a different smile this time, not the timid, unsure smile of the boy who had once walked through those doors, but a smile that held secrets. "It's going well. Really well, actually. I've been talking to people at school more than I ever thought I could. It's still hard sometimes, but I feel like I'm finally starting to get the hang of it." He paused, taking a sip of his coffee before adding, "I'm getting ready to take another big step, too." Maya's heart raced. She had known this moment would come, but hearing him say it aloud was a different thing altogether. "What's the next step?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, afraid of what he might say. Jonah looked at her, his gaze steady. "I think I want to start applying for jobs. I've been talking to my parents about it. They're supportive, but I want to do it on my own. I think I can handle it now. And I want to prove to myself that I can." Maya's heart swelled with pride, but it also cracked just a little. The boy she had helped guide, the boy she had watched grow, was now ready to take on the world in ways she hadn't imagined. He didn't need her in the same way anymore. He had reached a place where he was stepping out into the world with the confidence to handle whatever came his way. "That's incredible, Jonah," Maya said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm so proud of you. You've come so far." Jonah smiled, his eyes softening. "I couldn't have done it without you. You've been there for me when no one else was. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Maya swallowed the lump in her throat. "You did all the hard work, Jonah. I just helped you see what you were capable of." He nodded, but there was a finality in the air now. The moment felt both like an ending and a beginning. Jonah was moving forward, ready to tackle the next chapter of his life. But in doing so, he was leaving behind the person who had helped him navigate the first few chapters. There was a long silence between them, a silence that spoke volumes. Maya couldn't deny the bittersweet feeling that had taken root in her chest. Jonah was ready. He didn't need her in the same way anymore. And that realization hit her harder than she had expected. Jonah's phone buzzed on the counter, interrupting the moment. He glanced at the screen before turning back to Maya. "I've got to go," he said, his voice quieter now, more reflective. "But I just wanted to thank you for everything. I'll keep you updated on how things go." Maya smiled through the tears that threatened to spill. "I'll be here, Jonah. Always." Jonah stood up, hesitated for a moment, and then pulled her into a hug. It was brief, but it held all the unspoken words they didn't need to say. Maya closed her eyes, allowing the moment to wash over her. She had done her part. She had helped him find his confidence, his strength. Now, it was time for Jonah to walk the path he had carved for himself. As Jonah left the cafe, Maya stood by the counter, watching him go. She knew that this wasn't the end of their story, but it was the end of a chapter. She had given him the tools to succeed, and now it was his turn to take the world on. She smiled, feeling a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. The boy who had once been trapped in his own fears had broken free, and in doing so, had set her free as well. And with that, Maya took a deep breath, ready to face her own future with the same courage she had helped Jonah find. The story wasn't over. It was only just beginning.